Morning.
My name is Steve Cochran, Superintendent of the Princeton Public Schools, and thank you very much for giving up time on a Saturday morning to be here. On November 6th, which is now the new date for the referendum, we as a town will be making a really important decision about the future of our kids and our community, and sessions like this are really important so that we can be as educated as possible. We want people to understand the vision, the goals, the process that we went through, the implications of the referendum, both in terms of learning and in terms of cost, and the options that we have. And so I'm hopeful that we'll be able to have that conversation this morning, and this will be one of many sessions we will continue to have and open up to the community, because we all benefit when we have a sharing of perspectives, when we get to hear questions, when you hear responses from us, and it expands the knowledge base for the entire community, which benefits us all. We come to this session, I'm sure, with different ideas, different concerns and perspectives about the referendum, but I know that everyone in this room cares deeply about our kids and our community, and I'm grateful for that. It's a privilege to be able to serve as a superintendent in a community such as this. I'm joined this morning by Scott Downey, who is the principal architect for this Diesel Group, one of the two firms that's been working on the referendum design and implementation plan. And what I think we'll do is take about 15 minutes just to sort of bring this group up to speed with where we are now with the referendum. So this past Tuesday? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. This past Tuesday night.
Steve, sorry, I might just give you a mic. I think
So we try to use the board members and other staff and consultant members who are here, please.
Oh, sure. Yeah, sorry. I'll adjust. Board members, we have.
Good morning, I'm Debbie Bronfeld, I'm on the board. I am on personnel, student achievement, and finance.
Good morning, I'm Greg Stankwitz, I'm also on the board, and I'm on finance and policy.
Any staff members, other consultants?
Just Scott. So what we thought we would do, I'm giving an overview of where we are now with the referendum. So on Tuesday night, the board did vote officially to break the referendum, the full referendum, into two questions, question 1 and question 2. And we'll walk you through which projects of the referendum were placed in question 1 and those that were placed in question 2. And then we thought we would open it up for questions and comments from this group. So as you are listening to Scott take us through the referendum as to where we are now, think about something that excites you about what you see, something that you would look forward to, and think about a question or a concern that you might have. And when we're done, we may be passing out 3x5 cards, and you can jot those down, or we can just talk about those. But that'll be the basis for the discussion that we have moving forward. And then it's going to be just sort of an informal give and take, and we'll try and answer as many questions as people have. So with that, Mr. Down, are you ready? You all mic'd up?
I'm all mic'd up, yes. So I'm going to take you through the presentation. This is similar to the presentation that was shown earlier in the week, Tuesday, and also the week before. So let's start off with where we are, and specifically what's in the referendum. So the board did choose to break the referendum into two questions. The overall scope remains largely the same, and I'll walk you through that. Those questions, the way about question works in New Jersey, question 2 depends on the passage of question 1. So you cannot have a circumstance where question 2 passes, but question 1 does not. So question 1 has to pass in order for question 2 to be considered for passage. So at the elementary schools, there are a variety of upgrades that are planned. The district is proposing a reconfiguration, so the elementary schools would would handle through 4th grade. 5th and 6th grade would be a new school. The middle school would be 7 and 8, and the high school would remain 9 to 12. Now, the reason for this, and there were a wide variety of configurations that were looked at before the decision was made on that one. But the most acute enrollment increases that the district is facing are at the middle school and at the high school. And particularly at the middle school right now, middle school is already over capacity by a couple hundred students. The high school as well, but the high school growth, because the enrollment growth feeds through the district, the high school growth will not hit in a heavy way for a couple of years. But the middle school is already busting at the seams. So by creating a 5-6 school, there are a wide range of educational benefits that Steve can detail for you. But speaking as the architect and looking at space, the capacity, therefore, of the district's needs from grades all the way through 8 are handled at one facility that can be built efficiently and can provide space that can help move the district in the direction of having an asset, a flexible and contemporary learning environment available to it for those particular grades, which are really critical in students' development. So upgrades at the elementary schools include the HVAC upgrades, the addition of air conditioning, classrooms and cafeterias where it does not exist. There's a heavy emphasis on security enhancements in the buildings, both in terms of the entries and other aspects of the schools to upgrade safety and security, including lockdown capability with door hardware upgrades, which also provide upgraded ADA access to those buildings in some cases. And there are electrical service improvements and additional outlets in the rooms. We obviously run a lot of things differently in classrooms now with computers and other things that need power. It's not always there and available. There was a plan to have the buildings configured so that exterior generators could be hooked up to them. That requires some reconfiguration of the electrical setup. That's been removed from the scope of the elementary schools. There are library upgrades at Littlebrook. That library has not been upgraded previously. And at a couple of the schools, there are some doors within the building that we're going to create that will break the building down into compartments. So it's less, there's more control in terms of how visitors can access the building and through the building at after-hour periods. At the middle school, there are again improvements in the various classroom and cafeteria areas for HVAC mechanical systems. Electrical upgrades, the building for security would be upgraded as well. There is a cover connector that will be created between the C and E wings. Right now, the students on days when it's raining or in the wintertime have to take a fairly long route around the building to get between those two areas. This would just be a covered area, would not be an interior space area. When the Media Commons was created a couple of years ago, the old library space was left behind, used in some degree for teacher training and other activities, but we're going to formalize that space with some improvements so it is more available for educational use. And there will be acoustic upgrades in some areas, which are very loud right now in terms of the student volume in those areas and the noise associated with them, so they're more usable. And then there are a variety of field upgrades and some additional parking that's proposed along Franklin Avenue. Now at the high school, there's a fairly comprehensive upgrade. The split of the referendum into two questions primarily revolves around high school. So I'm going to take you through that in a little more detail and show you what's going to be in question 1 versus question 2. But you see a general listing up here, and the question 1 will include upgrades in the area of the fitness center. It will include the creation of several additional classrooms for capacity. The money that we have in the budget to mitigate the water issues that have happened outside the auditorium are part of this, as well as security and some other upgrades, mechanical systems, electrical upgrades. Everything in green you see up here is would be in question 1. Okay? But the bulk of the script at the high school will remain in question 2. And obviously, as I mentioned, there will be a new 5-6 school. I'll show you a little bit more detail on that. And the 5-6 school, in order to facilitate that, the district administrative, transportation, and maintenance and operations have to be relocated from Valley Road. And the district is looking to purchase a property, a Thanet Road property, that would allow them to relocate to that property, and Valley Road would be available for the 5-6 school. So at the high school, you see a floor plan of the high school up here. The main entrance to the high school is here. That area will be upgraded for security. The guidance area is in need of upgrades, and that is located here, so that area will be renovated and improved. The fitness center, which is one of the older gyms, and that volume will receive an interstitial second floor. So within that high volume, we have the ability to put a second floor in that space. And that will provide additional education and activity areas. And then there's a one-story area right next to it that will receive a second-story addition. So specifically that area would receive several additional classrooms. There are 4 classrooms shown here. The second floor would support a variety of activities. There will be dedicated space for wrestling, fencing, and additional activities for additional space for movement and other types of activities in that area. One of the primary issues for the high school is there really is not a lot of room to expand without impacting fields or parking, both of which are at a premium throughout the district, not just at the high school. So the approach to the high school focused on expanding inward, and I'll detail that a little bit more in a minute. So Valley Road, looking at the new school would sit largely where the existing building sits. The new school is a bit larger than the existing building. The fire station is here. Witherspoon, the municipal building, is here. So there are 2 parking and entry areas that would be created. The one on this side off of Valley Road would be for parent drop-off and visitor parking and arrival. Okay, so the main entrance of the school would be located right here. The second entrance back here is for buses and staff. For safety reasons, we try to keep the parents and the cars separate from the buses and the staff in an ideal scenario. So students would be entering primarily through this area, with drop-off occurring primarily in this area. Since this graphic was created, we spent a fair amount of time talking with the municipality, with the police department, and so forth, and in order to reduce the traffic on backup potential on Valley Road, we would actually be entering, there would be a loop here and an exit on this side. And then the fields at Valley Road would receive turf, so that those fields can exist in a slightly tighter configuration, because we are taking some space away for this drive that's being created in this area. Now, this is not the 5-6 school, obviously, because it's not built yet, but this is a school that was done in Colorado by Field and Air, the firm that we're associated with on the project. The gathering stair here is a feature that will be incorporated into the center of the 5-6 school. And we're also looking at this to be incorporated in an area at the high school as well. So it's there's an emphasis on flexible space, on space that can be used in different ways. The gathering stair here can be used for just informal activity, large groups, and a variety of things can happen in these areas. Both buildings will be fully accessible. The second level of this, for example, would be accessible via elevator, as well as accessibility handled at the lower level. So this is, I'm going to show you a couple images, which are really concepts at this point in terms of what the 5-6 school would look like. But this is the main entrance. So the drop-off area I showed you here, the main entrance to the school here. A little tough to see on the screen, but the materials would be an emphasis on natural materials, stone, brick, matching the surrounding areas, some copper accents on the flashings around the roof, not a lot, but trying to keep the building consistent with the language that you see around downtown here in Princeton. This would be an elevation that would face the municipal building. This is Witherspoon Street right here. The trees you see are representative of the trees that are there. Our goal is to maintain those and have the building fit into the site. But you do see a lot of windows, a lot of natural light. The building will pursue LEED certification, so it will be sustainably designed and will incorporate a broad range of sustainable features. But natural light in particular is one that has been studied numerous times throughout the country and has actually been found to enhance natural light, and additional natural light has actually been found to lead to better testing results for students. It improves the environment that students function in, and there are real tangible benefits. This would be the corner of the building that would be adjacent to the fire station, which would sit right over here. This would be the student entrance with the bus drop-off here. So one feature, you see the arch here, the existing building that's on that site. There's a history to that building, and there's a strong desire within the design of the school to incorporate the history of that site into the learning environment. So there would be aspects within the building that aren't yet designed. You know, it might be murals, might be other components that will tie to the history of that site. But we're looking to maintain the existing archway and incorporate that. Here, the idea is that that's incorporated on the side where the students are entering and exiting the building. So every day, we can create connections with history to that site as the students come in and leave the building during the day. This is an aerial view, so to orient you, this is Valley Road, Witherspoon, fire station is here, the entry to the building would be right here. So you do see some green areas, there will be a variety of green roof areas that will be incorporated into the building. The turf area will have underground drainage so that we can manage not only the water that is on our site, but also improve water management in the area in general. And again, just a slightly different view. This is the gym. This is the main entrance here. And the drop-off, car drop-off, or parent drop-off. So at the high school, the challenges at the high school is in a position where we really can't expand it without impacting parking, fields, or impacting the community. So this is a layout of the existing high school. What we did is we looked at, after a variety of approaches were considered, we looked at there are 3 courtyards in the high school. Have might not even know exists because you really can't even see it from a hallway. But these courtyards here have limited access from the hallway, but they really aren't used. So the goal was to infill those courtyards, basically expand the building but do it inwardly, so we're not pushing out into parking and fields and other components in the neighborhood. And create a series of flexible spaces. So right now, the circulation in the building is tough. These hallways, which are here and here, are very crowded during the day, during class exchanges and so forth. You know, kids are out in those hallways, they're doing activities in those hallways, they're eating in those hallways. So the goal here is to create a series of flexible and collaborative spaces where those things have a place to happen. The emphasis here is on a variety of spaces, some of which are more open than others, but many of which are, you know, fairly contained, like a space like this might be. But if you imagine this space, and that's a garage door that can be opened up, and then kids can flow out, and teachers can flow out, and activity can happen both in and out of the classroom, or this room can be joined with the room next to it, so that larger groups can be brought together to cover the same topic. Those types of spaces are what we're looking to achieve in the high school. So to give you an example, this is the main courtyard, which is right here. The existing entry is right here. So on this image, the existing entry here, so we would create a new secure entrance. This area is being referred to as a heart, but it would be a main gathering space. You see a gathering stairs similar to what you saw in that other image. There are additional educational spaces in here. Upstairs in the second floor would be created. This area would have stations along here where kids can sit with laptops and computers and do work. There would be rooms and breakout areas that would be in this zone as well. This is an image of what that might look like, looking down from the top of the gathering stair. And then this is one of the other courtyards. So you can see here the goal is that this area, which is right outside where the dining area might be, you can connect to that existing dining area, open it up. Dining can happen in different places. There's now kind of a main circulation zone here, which will take some of the burden off the hallways that are there in the building and provide breakout areas for the studying and activity that happens in those hallways has now a place to go. And in so doing, we freed up some space to renovate the surrounding classrooms and create additional capacity here. So everything has a cost, right, as we've perhaps have seen us talk about. So the cost breaks down into 2 questions in the numbers that you see here. At the top, the elementary and the renovations at the middle school, so a total of about $15 million. The high school, the partial improvements that are being undertaken, about $10.8 million. The 5-6 school, about $39.9 million. Turf and athletic improvements at the Valley Road Field, and the various other sites. There are some improvements at JW. At the high school, I didn't show you those, but at the high school there would be a bathroom area created next to the stadium. We're going to provide water access to all the fields, which doesn't exist right now. Improvements to the tennis courts for drainage in that area. Netting around the lacrosse field so that balls don't go over and so forth. And then the expansion, the purchase, and renovation and configuration of the Thanet site. So the first question would be about $82.5 million. And then the second question is the bulk of the high school scope, which is the budget that you see here. So the total has not changed, that's the $129.6 million. Now, all the numbers you're seeing, all the numbers I'm ever going to show you prior to the referendum are budgets. They're not costs. And when a district goes to referendum, they're effectively asking the public for the maximum that they can spend. Because once the referendum passes, they cannot spend $1 more legally. They cannot spend $1 more. So these costs are not just material and labor to actually, these budgets to actually build the building, but they include soft costs. So about 25% of this number is soft costs. That includes various fees, permitting costs, contingency, which varies from about 10% to over 13% at each particular project. You know, our goal is not to spend that contingency, but I can promise you the high school is, 90 plus years old. We're going to open the walls and we're going to find surprises. It always happens. So that's why that contingency is there. But the goal is not to spend that contingency. But it has to be there because once the referendum passes, as I said, legally, the district cannot spend, 129, 614, 926. It literally is a cap. So that's why that contingency is there. So if you look at the costs and you say, well, those costs look a little high. Yeah, they are to a degree, but they have to be. And again, that contingency, the goal is not to spend it, but it needs to be there for safety reasons. So what does that mean in terms of tax impact? So I'm going to show you 4 slides. They're going to talk about the 2 questions and talk about it in terms of what that impact might be to an average homeowner, which is the first slide you see up here, and what that impact might be on $100,000 of assessed value. So your home might be worth more or less than the average, which in Princeton is $837,074. So this is strictly question 1. So the district has existing debt that it is still paying on. Specifically, that debt would end right here, okay? So the first 3 years are a tax increase because you have the new debt on the old debt. At the end of that 3 years, that old debt is gone. And everything beyond that is actually a reduction from what you were paying now. So the baseline in this graph, right here, is what you are currently paying in terms of that tax impact. So the first 3 years are an increase. You see the numbers there. But all the years after that are actually a reduction, and the average over that period of time is a reduction of $164, a little bit more than $164. So the bonds that would be considered here are 30-year bonds. They would be issued in multiple issuances. Not all of them would be issued right up front, which is why you see this graph actually runs down to about 32 or 33 years. The high school project will lag a little bit behind. There's more time involved in the design and engineering of that, and there will be more time involved in the construction because of the need to phase it more carefully. So all the bonds will not be issued on day 1, but they will draw out over a period of a couple of years. And now, if you take that same question 1, the $82.5 million, and you look at it in terms of per 100,000 in assessed value. So if you know your assessed value of your home, you can use these numbers to compare to what that cost would mean for you. So again, the graph is effectively the same. The numbers are different, obviously. So the first 3 years, this would be the projected impact. And these also are all estimates. We're making assumptions on interest rates and other components of the debt that we won't know until those bonds are actually issued. But the financial advisors are, again, trying to be conservative, just like we are with your architectural budgets, building in contingencies to be on the safe side. So the numbers we're showing you, should be the worst case scenario if you want to look at it that way. Again, a reduction that in this case for 100,000 assessed value averages about just over $21 over the span of that debt. Now, if question 1 and question 2 were to pass, and again, question 2 can't pass without question 1, but if they both pass, then the number that would be bonded would be the 129.6. And you see the graph does look a little different. The first 3 years still heavier because of the existing debt, and then it does decline over time, but the average here would be an average increase of about $71 over that span of time. So if both questions were to pass and the full amount were to be bonded, then the average here would be a slight increase, about $71 on average over that period of time. And again, this is per average home, so per the 837 figure. Now, if you look at it per 100,000 in assessed value, again, the graph is similar, but the numbers are different. So here, the average impact per 100,000 is about $8.50. So, with that, we'll move on and take it from there.
Thank you, Scott. All right, are there 3x5 cards that people have?
So, yeah, we can have, if you want an index card because you prefer to write your question and ask it, I'm happy to give.
Otherwise, just do me a favor, just take a moment, turn to the person next to you, introduce yourself if you don't know them, and just talk about something that you like about the referendum, that you think is exciting, has potential, and then a question that you'd like to have answered. All right, so just.
Can we do it less formally? Just ask questions. Or...
No. Yeah, so just, but right now, just turn to the person next to you and, yeah. I feel a little guilty ending the lively conversation you all having on a Saturday morning.
$60 minimum. What do you think?
People are welcome to ask questions as well.
It's somewhat disingenuous to show what the status quo is if you start from zero, and how much is this going to cost every year?
If we can,
large debt service is coming off, that doesn't change the equation.
lively conversation. It's good. We can do this a little more informally. If there are things that you share with your neighbor that you feel comfortable sharing with the whole group in terms of things that that you're looking forward to, that you think have potential, that you're excited about for kids or the community, then we'll turn to your questions or concerns. So, let's start with that. Yes, sir.
Jim Firestone is my name. I had concern about the $700.
No, you have to say something good first.
The
You have to say something good first.
I'm sorry, what?
You have to say something good first.
Starting
That's
with
what you asked for.
He's asking, he's starting out with us saying good things. After everybody gets a chance to say good things, then you can say what you want to ask.
Okay. Superintendent, you look very cute this morning.
Thank you. Are we able to edit that name right
I just have a question that perplexes me, which is, from the things I've seen in the newspaper, it sounds like the increase in the cost of this to us per year is going to be $750.
On that third year.
Pardon?
Yeah, the third year.
Well, wait a second. The question is, without the old bonds being retired, wouldn't we still be continuing to pay $750 per year for this all the way through? Or are we taking being free from the old bonds
Yes.
as being, oh, you're free from the old bonds, you can just add this on the top now? Do you understand what I'm saying?
So,
What are the real costs of this as opposed to measuring it in terms of the old bonds having been retired?
so there's the actual debt service,
Right.
and then there's the additional tax impact. So we're showing the additional tax impact. So the debt service we have now is in the, I don't know the exact numbers, in the neighborhood of $5 to $5.5 million, I think. And then we would obviously be adding more debt service with a new bond. So for a period of time, we'll be looking at $12 million of debt service and paying on that, except until year 4, when the $5.5 million we're currently paying drops off, and now we're back down to a level where, over time, it would actually be a reduction in what we're currently paying. Our debt service would actually be lower, and the tax impact would be lower than what you're
I'm
currently
afraid
paying.
that that's lost on me.
Can you go back to the slide, Scott? Are you able to?
Is it lost on you?
It is. The question that Susan asking, and I would also ask, is if the referendum didn't pass, we would be seeing a very significant net decrease in our taxes because the debt service would be coming off after year 3. And therefore, what is the increase? And let's ignore the fact that the debt service is coming off. What is the projected increase each year as a result of passing this referendum as opposed to not passing this referendum? That's where we should be coming from in terms of examining whether it's worthwhile for the community.
Thank you, Councilman. You look
Yeah.
So these numbers are represented as the differential from what the tax impact is now.
Right.
So, certainly it could be represented as you're describing, but that's not what I've shown on this slide.
That's somewhat misleading.
Yeah, so I assume the 750 number you were referring to is this figure, right? Which assumes both questions pass, the total amount that's been presented to you. So this assumes the total amount, the 750 figure you referenced, assumes the total amount of 129 million, right? So if only the first question is in play, that number is low.
So you would, if the referendum didn't pass, you'd have to, obviously, you have to, even with this chart, you can't make a determination of what the net impact would be if the referendum didn't pass. Because
Well, right,
you can't determine what the cost is of the referendum.
Right, so you would have, we would present it differently. Now, the graph would look similar, in that you would have tax impact from the current debt the first 3 years.
Right.
But then it would drop.
It would drop significantly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what that drop would be. So we'll have about $5 million of debt that will drop off. And we have a total budget in the $95 million range.
So the 5 million is just the total debt or the debt service?
Debt service.
Oh, that's the debt service.
Yeah, and
So, going back to the original directive that's part of the conversation, I want to say a couple things. I love the community school concept. I think it's really important. It's an innovation in public education, and if anybody in this room is interested, you should Google it. It's fantastic, cutting edge. It will meet the needs of a growing segment of our community that's not represented in any of these meetings, by the way. It's really important. I love that concept. I love the design. I think it's beautiful. Sorry. I just want to urge you to put a lot of attention to the new spaces at the high school. If anybody hasn't been inside the high school on a school day in the last 20 years, I urge you to do so because it is an overcrowded dump. It's beautiful from the outside. So you drive by and you think, how beautiful is this high school? What's wrong with these people? Why do they need more? It is so crowded and so dilapidated. And the school budgets have not been able to keep up with the maintenance needs. And I would say that the design for the new spaces, and especially the heart, is beautiful, so thank you.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to follow on the positive and then ask my question from there. I think the Fire to School is a wonderful addition. There's a huge difference between kindergarten and fifth grade. And how nice for fifth graders to move on to a new building and get that extra sense of maturity and not have, a lot of kindergartners see these fifth graders as kind of big scary people. And fifth and sixth grade to have their own, because each grade when you're starting out as the new kid, the big kids are very big. So it's nice to have these nurturing schools from fifth grade up to ninth. So I would say I think that's wonderful. I would like to ask you about Thanet. So looking at the chart, it's costing $12.6 million for acquiring the property and then renovating and moving. So it's $6 million for the
$6.5 million for the acquisition of the property.
Can you explain a little bit about the other $6 million? What are we getting for projected $6 million budget?
That's the budgeted cost for all renovations and alternatives to occupancy.
Yeah, so again, as with the other numbers, that includes contingency and various allowances. It's a budget, not an actual cost. But there are some improvements that need to be made to the building in terms of conditions, so some mechanical improvements, roof replacement. But then also we need to renovate the interior to support the district's needs. So create the offices, run the wires for the phone system, communications, various things. The mechanical systems have to be reconfigured for the various office setup spaces that will be created for their use. So the balance of that cost involves really two components. One is the upgrades to the building that needs to be handled, and two is the renovations for the three departments, facility administration, operations, and transportation that would be created in that building.
So it sounds like you're kind of buying a fixer-upper.
No, I wouldn't say a fixer-upper. The building is in good shape, but there are some things that need to be upgraded in it. So it's not dilapidated in any way, which fixer-upper kind of conjures the image of a dilapidated building. But there are upgrades, and as the purchaser, the district would be responsible for those upgrades.
And are there is there any wiggle room for, is there anything that can be cut out? We haven't really seen what that building renovation is going to look like. We've seen the other buildings, but
Right.
Is there a way to find out a line item or general budgetary section?
So the Thanet property in general is on a slightly different track time-wise. To take you back in time over the last several years, the district looked at literally dozens of possible properties. They looked at offers on several. Thanet was one of the ones that was looked at early on, but it fell off the radar because the owner refused the initial offer. Okay. So the district moved on. You may have seen we presented an alternative solution with a property at Hurontown and the addition of JW and so forth. So the Thanet opportunity then rearose only very recently, about a month and a half or so ago. And so we're pursuing the details on that. We have right now, our engineers have been out there. We are preparing a site acquisition package that will go to the Department of Education for approval. But the Department of Education doesn't have to approve that property prior to referendum because it's strictly administrative use. It's not for student, we're not visiting students there currently and so forth. But we are going to prepare and submit for ultimately getting that approval. We're just on a slightly compressed time frame right now. So we'll be able to have the details relatively soon because we're kind of catching up, but we don't have them just ready to do that.
It's also important to remember that the Thanet property is an investment in 15 acres in the center of town. It gives us wonderful opportunities for the future. So we know at some point we would like to expand our athletic fields. There's potential space there for that. We talked at the very beginning of the referendum visioning process about the creation of a preschool program, which would help with closing the achievement gap as we look at providing learning to all students prior to even coming to the entering kindergarten. And so it gives us those options that another piece of property wouldn't. So the investment in making sure that those buildings are up to code and safe and secure and comfortable has implications down the road.
I think the future plans or wish lists are terrific, but renovating to that level is not part of this.
No.
And is it for both buildings, or you're just renovating the space that would be used right now?
So we're just renovating the space that would be used right now.
So presumably just one building.
Yes.
We'll hope the number is less than that.
Thank you.
So were you taking the questions or would we get the revenue?
The revenue? Well, because we have a renter on the third floor of that building, so which will bring in around $200,000 to the operating budget. And I don't know if you want to speak, as long as we're on FANUC, I don't know if you want to speak to the operating costs of FANUC, because that's been a question that's come up before. What's it going to cost us to run this new property? And thinking that $200,000 rent will just about cover that, and maybe a little bit left over.
Yeah, it should be around that. I don't have the hard numbers with me, but we have utility information that I think we've gotten from the current owner of the property in terms of what the utilities are, and we need to estimate what the potential impact would be from now moving in and occupying those two floors. But the initial rough number was in the neighborhood of what that was.
So I think the number we got from the current owners of the property was $118,000 for energy costs for both buildings. We pay $89,000 right now to heat and cool the Valley Road building. So there's a $39,000 or $29,000 difference there. Once the building is occupied, those costs will go up probably about 30%. So I'm looking at maybe $150,000, to run it. And so the differential is that we're paying about $90,000 now for the administration costs. So the operating costs of that facility are not going to be overly significant.
Can you read one of the questions on the?
I can't. I put my glasses on. I think the overall plan and the designs for each component are great. What specific steps will be taken to ensure that all components of the referendum will be delivered as designed on time and on budget? Great question. So, Scott, you want to speak to what we're looking at in terms of project manager and time frame?
Yeah, so the cost, the budgets that you have seen include allowance for a construction manager to be brought on board, so a third party that would work with us and watch over what we do and so forth in terms of the design of the documents. The schedule is something that we've looked at a little bit in the sense that the difference between October as the initial referendum date and November is actually fairly significant in terms of the construction. It does, a month means a lot when we compress that time frame. Our goal is to open the 5-6 school for the 2020 school year. So we're right now looking at the potential to advance some site engineering that relates to approvals that have a timeline associated with them so that we can try and remain on track with that schedule. But the goal would be to have that project designed and put it out to bid in the spring of 2019. And the construction window would be probably about 16 months. It would take us right up to September of 2020. The schedule will be tight, we know that, which is why we're right now looking at ways that we can reduce some of the pressure on that for to try and get some approval timeline started and so forth. Now, the high school is a little bit different. The high school will be assuming both questions passed and the full scope of the high school is implemented. That will be a project that, number one, will take longer to design and engineer, and it's far more complicated. So we will be looking to bid that project probably in the fall of 2019. And that project will be a phased construction. So we will be taking, the first step will be to try to build that initial infill courtyards, create that additional space. And then we will be taking different wings offline at a time to renovate them and improve them. So that phasing will happen, will work its way through the building, and that will take a couple of years. Our initial estimate was about 2.5 years as a construction window. And, the goal through any phase construction, and we do that with schools most of the time, because the summer being 2 months, you can't build buildings in 2 months. So the emphasis during any phasing project is to minimize the impact on education, keep the school running. Obviously, safety and so forth are primary concerns, and a very detailed phasing plan will be developed as the design of that project progresses. That phasing actually gets put into the bids. The contractors are bidding not just on the project, but on building it according to that way of phasing, so that we can plan in advance, and that will all be part of the design process for the project. Yeah, so the construction manager who would help manage would work with us during the design engineering. The budget for that is in here. And they would provide people on site on a constant basis throughout.
So I'm just going to read one more question here, and then we'll open it up, because this question is one that a lot of people seem to have confusion around, and it would be great to have some clarity on this. So the question reads, compared to the 2018 tax rate, will the tax rate in 2023, and I think this person is looking at the fact sheet here, will it be 3164 plus 4120 plus 6040 minus 381 equal 132.43? And this does seem to keep coming up, that the increases are cumulative, that they build on each other, and that's not the case. That's not the way we are laying this out. So if you look at that sheet, or if you can go to that slide, Scott. Yeah, so this would, in fact, as Scott was saying, that the zero is what you were currently paying. Year one, it would be 3164 more per 100,000. Is this good per 100,000?
Yes.
Yeah, per 100,000. So if I have a $300,000 home, I would multiply 3164 by 3 and get $95, something in that neighborhood. The next year, I would multiply 4120 by 3 and get $124. Would be the increase. It's not cumulative. It's not
Increase from this year.
From this
not
year.
increase from
Right.
next year.
Correct.
Right.
So
The
this
first year increase is roughly $31. The second year increase is roughly $10 more.
per assessed value.
Per 100,000 assessed value. So the second year is not $72 more. The second year is roughly $10 more than the first year, or $41 from what you're currently paying, which is why we set up the graph here.
And this is only the first half, the first question you asked.
This is the first question.
First question, yeah. Per
Yeah.
100,000, per 100,000 assessed value. Also, keep that in mind. It is assessed value, which would show up on your tax bill. It is not market value.
And it's, and the question 1 and 2 together is also shown here. It's important to keep in mind, if you go back to that previous slide. So, to the question that was raised earlier in terms of, if we don't pass the referendum at all, then there's this tax reduction. And that is in fact the case. But every district looking as responsible stewards of their facilities looks for opportunities, because we can't, through the operating budget that we have each year, we can't make major improvements, we can't make major upgrades to boilers that are inefficient and replacing windows and roofs. We don't have the ability to do that within our operating budget. So we look for these opportunities every 20 years, every 30 years, to be able to maintain our facilities in a responsible way. And so as one referendum drops off, we're able to then make some of the changes that are important to the learning environments and the growth of our schools in a cost-effective way. If we were to wait, we still have to repair a roof at some point. We still have to repair a boiler, and we wouldn't have the funds to be able to do that.
Not to mention, you still have, the capacity issues that are being addressed.
Correct.
The solution would still exist. We still would have to create a way to handle those students. So, ultimately, it would be up to the board, and I don't directly speak for the board, but if this question, these questions did not pass, the board would still have to consider some kind of solution that would figure out how to address that.
Yes, Dave?
Can we see the spreadsheet behind this graph? Or at least make it publicly available?
So,
Because I think what's happened is the cost is being, overlaid on the old bond, and then there's even some projections on the way the tax base changes. But somewhere in that spreadsheet is just the cost. And I think it'd be helpful for people to look at it different ways.
So we have a financial advisors, Phoenix advisors. They work with the town. They have their work with the districts throughout the state. So they're the ones that have been working with us, and they have a complex matrix that they consider. So it's current debt and anticipated future debt. They're factoring in interest rates at a conservative level. They're looking at ratables and how those may grow or not over time. They're looking at offsets. They're looking at, all right, we borrow some of this money, we don't need all of it for construction all at once, so we're going to invest it and then use the interest to pay. So they're also looking at the debt relief we get from the state. So there's a multiplicity of factors that they consider in determining the tax impact. Very conservative, so we're hoping it will be less than this, but it's not a simple formula. So one of the things that we are looking to do is to bring Phoenix advisors in and have them do a forum like this so that the experts can really explain to people all the factors that they're using for that formula. But they're very conservative in the way that they go about making these projections. So I don't have the answer to what you're looking for right now.
Before you get the tax impact, there's the cost. And I think we haven't seen the cost. We've just seen the tax impact as massaged by these many factors you described. So it would be great to see the cost.
I just want to say, there's a lot of people that are going to be yelling out, so maybe I could just have Steve call and I'll bring over the mic so that there's a little bit more order.
Coming back to the question that was asked.
Yeah.
Coming back to the question that was asked. It's your belief, if I understand it, that when you combine the reduction in the current debt payments and the costs of question one, that graph over there is telling us that in the fourth year,
Correct.
if a house right now is paying $10,000 in tax,
$10,000 minus.
the fourth year is going to be lower than $10,000, not higher than $10,000.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman in the back. Sorry, Ken.
That's okay.
Saturday morning exercising.
So there was something that you said that I just want to make sure I understand if this is just a matter of practice or law or whatnot. I have maintenance in my household, right? And some of them I fund out of operating expenses, and some I kind of treat like a capital program, although the capital committee doesn't meet too often. In any case, you describe a lumpy process where every 20 years or so we come with a whole bundle of things that we want to get addressed, some of which are interdependent and naturally should be bundled, and some of which are relatively independent.
Correct.
So my question to you is, if the community is reacting to the full size of this thing, right, trying hard to swallow on top of an already expensive tax environment, regardless of whether or not it's going up or down, we pay a lot of tax here, and we all need to recognize that. Have you given any thought to unbundling these things and having, I'm not saying have a bond referendum every 6 months or anything, but could some of these things not be on 20 or 30-year cycles? Because I don't think the town does it that way. And is there something specific about schooling that says I have to do 25-year cycles of bundling?
I was, to your question about, there is something different. The town is different than the school district. The school district cannot issue long-term debt that exceeds 5 years without the permission of the public, i.e. they have to go to referendum. They have to get a vote. The town is not subject to that same requirement. The town has more liberty, if you will, to issue bonds and do what they need to do on a periodic basis. So, could the school district come out every year with a referendum
Well, I'm not suggesting every year, I'm just saying, other than every 30 years or 20 years.
So just to clarify, because I think I understand where you may be going with this question. We do have capital improvement plan, facilities plan. So we have a cycle of maintenance for the district as a whole. And so we set aside money every year for certain capital projects that are needed. It's just that building a new school to accommodate,
I understand.
hundreds of new kids, that's something that we can't take out of the operating budget. And some major things like replacing all of the windows in a single building. I think we probably couldn't take that out of the capital budget. We would have to use referendum or something big expenses.
But in principle, I hear you saying you could unbundle some of the things that are not physically interlinked, that are part of this package, and do them at another time.
But we're already doing that. Like we're already doing the sort of general maintenance kinds of things within the operating budget and the capital budget. We have a facilities plan that we look at each year, and we try and make the changes that we need to so that our buildings are maintained. So it's sort of things that go above and beyond.
So the items in this combined 130 million are all of the sort that you just described, and they could not be unbundled.
If we were to do, the security is a major piece of this, right? So we're looking at, secure vestibules for all of our buildings. And that's not, I don't know what the cost exactly is on that, but we're looking at $1 million for those kinds of improvements, which we would not have within our capital plan.
Henry, you guys came in a little late. There was a slide at the beginning that you might find very helpful that broke down the different chunks of the different parts of the project.
I'm just still trying to get an answer. Is it yes or no, you could or you couldn't unbundle these things?
Well, there are components of this that could be undertaken on their own. For example, turfing a field.
Right, that's an obvious example.
It's not interdependent with the other scope, and arguably, you could say, well, we do 11 pieces and we'll do these things. There is an advantage of doing it this way, in that, number one, the district has to do a referendum. You're talking about a new school, we're talking about substantial reconfiguration of the high school. So we're in a rising interest rate environment, but interest rates are still relatively low for school districts. So, piecemealing, pushing those things out over time would increase costs, not to mention the costs that there are costs associated with putting a referendum to the public, for the school district, and so forth. So, yeah, you could potentially do that, but it's not typically the way school districts do it, because bundling it allows it to be handled in a more cost-effective way than it would if it was carried out over a longer period of time.
Let's talk just staying on that topic for a second in terms of school financing, because we are a unique animal. The one turf field, for example, at the high school, St. Pierre, it's about $1 million to turf a field. That's about the number that my supervisor had asked for in terms of new staff for next year, which we were not able to provide for them. We did not increase staff at all in the budget for next year. We're growing 10% every 5 years. We're growing in enrollment. We need to be adding staff if we can, and yet we keep running up against that 2% cap, the increase in the tax levy. And so the operating budget, we need to make these difficult choices. Am I going to turf a field, which there's great merit in that. Right now, that field is only used for field hockey, because I can't have PE using that field. I can't have football practicing on that field because it's a grass field, which means great divots, which means when those girls go out to hit a field hockey ball, it's going to hit a divot, it's going to jump up, and it's going to hit them in the face. And so we use that field just for field hockey. I would get a whole lot more use out of that field if it were turfed. But then I have to make a choice between, do I turf that field and get the real activity out of it that I could, or do I use that money to hire new staff? And so the referendum allows us to be able to do some of these things that we would not otherwise be able to do at all.
Oh, wait, sorry.
I'm Chris Grant, and I do have some experience having been on boards of independent schools, state universities, and I chaired the Health Facilities Finance Authority. And I'm just saying that I'm a 37-year taxpayer and resident and mother of 2 young adults now. So I have some experience, and I guess what I want to ask you is about program costs. There's been some thoughtful, specific arithmetic calculations done, and so I'd like to know what the program costs are going to be in addition to this, because as you said, I thought the budget was $90 million a year, but I guess the annual operating budget is $95.
But you throw in $5 million for the debt service.
Okay, so it's $90 million a year, but you said, I know attending a meeting, you said the budget could go up, the operating budget can go up. So isn't it a little more appropriate to also look at the program cost impact that we're actually going to see from these various things, even if it's an estimate, because I understand it would be an estimate. But my main concern goes back to the basics, and that is people do not understand what is being said about your taxes. If I have a mortgage and I pay it off, I could use that money for many other things the next year. But what this is saying is, guess what? You're going to have to take on a new equal mortgage, just a new mortgage. You have to continue to pay your mortgage. But the good news is you're only going to pay your new mortgage that costs the same cost as your old mortgage, plus $100 and some per 100,000 asset. That's not, that's somewhat incomplete. And people don't understand that. So I would suggest somehow you show that and you show the program costs. I was going to say what's exciting first. There are some, certainly it's very imaginative and very impressive. But obviously, this is not going to help. If people can't live here, they can't take advantage of it. So, program costs, what are the specifics, and can't we have a transparent that really shows X taxpayer paying $10,000, $15,000, if you want to know, I'll tell you, I'm paying over $25,000 a year in state and school taxes. I love Princeton, I love the system. That's a lot of money. It's less than 50% of the total cost. So, I have to argue to myself, what's worth it. So believe me, I'm thinking about that. And that's not. So can you tell us about the program costs and why we can't have a transparent total cost?
So back to your second question first.
Program.
No, the tax impact in terms of whatever taxes you may be paying. If you look at your assessed value and then use the $100,000 number, you should be able to compute what the tax impact would be.
No, that's not true. And if whenever you attend, that would be very helpful.
Yeah,
I'd be happy to attend that. But that what you just said is not true. And this chart is fundamentally misleading because it does not show the actual impact on the taxes of the referendum compared to not passing the referendum. That piece of information is vital and it's missing.
Okay. And we can try and show that. Although we also need to show correspondingly the impact on students and facilities if we didn't pass it. But this chart.
Property values, right? In schools.
Well, that's all conjecture. But you can certainly argue the impact on the students and the program and everything else.
So all right. So the other question though is that this chart shows the tax impact per 100,000 for the referendum, the building. It doesn't show what tax impact may be for the operating costs. So that really was your question, and it's a fair question. And we've been trying to be open about this from the very beginning, that there will be operating costs associated with it. So we are looking, but it's important to know that the operating costs of the new school, if we're looking at the 5-6 school, have to stay within the 2% cap. There's not a waiver that the state allows for us to go over the 2% when we open a new school. There used to be, years ago, that no longer is in play. So we are looking at, most of the costs are staff. So we are looking at probably 22 staff members, not teachers, because the teachers we're already paying for. Their salaries are in our current budget, so they would just, the 5th grade teachers would come over, the 6th grade teachers would come over. But we would be looking at having to add a principal, a nurse, maybe members of the child study team, counselor, and then you might have special area folks who would come over, a librarian.
Cafeteria.
Yes. Cafeteria is a separate fund, that's self-funded. So at the cafeterias have a custodians would come over. So that cost is about 1.5 million in salaries per year. And then we have some costs associated with just energy costs. It's going to be a sustainable green building, so hopefully those will be fairly low, and I don't know what estimates we have on the energy cost piece.
Yeah, so again, virtue of the process, the building isn't engineered at this point. We don't know what the details of the mechanical system. We don't have an energy model yet because we haven't gotten to that point in the process. However, what we did do is we looked at the existing district schools and drew some comparisons on a prorated basis based on square footage. So we looked at JW, we looked at one of the elementary schools, and then we looked at the 5-6 school. And I looked at the energy use of those, I prorated based on square footage. And then I discounted that conservatively by about 10% because this will be a far more efficient building on a square footage basis, which put us in the neighborhood of about $160,000, $170,000 a year in terms of energy costs to operate the building. Now, I think we will be more efficient than that, but I'm being very conservative at the 10%. I think we will actually be 20 or 30% more efficient, but I'm being careful with the number. Now, the other thing that's pertinent to that we didn't talk about, because we're focused primarily on the referendum here, is you heard me talk periodically in presentations about an ESIP, an Energy Savings Improvement Program. And school districts have the ability to do an ESIP, so specifically projects that save energy can be bundled together, and as long as we can structure them in a way where the projected energy savings over 15 years is more than enough to pay for those improvements today. And the district has the ability to issue special bonds associated with that. It does not impact taxes because it's a net zero scenario. It's a process that has to go through approval with the BPU, the Board of Public Utilities, and there's some very specific steps associated with it. But we're looking at doing that in concert with the referendum. So for example, at the elementary schools, the replacement of lighting with LED fixtures, efficiency in some of the mechanical systems is not in the referendum, but would be in the ESIP. And those improvements will, in addition to paying for themselves, will actually result in further energy savings beyond that. So that's tough to quantify at this point because the ESIP process is just getting started. We just are applying for a local government energy audit, which is an energy audit of the existing schools. It won't cost the district anything. There's money available through the Board of Public Utilities to cover that cost, so we're taking advantage of that program. So the ESIP will also contribute to the energy savings. So that, there's a lot of parts in that equation, but I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that because we didn't specifically talk about that in the presentation.
This gentleman has been waiting. Yes.
I don't even like it. So, the good things, the designs look great, okay? And I'm glad to hear that you're going to be doing sustainable. But two questions in relation to that. The way the things are designed for this new type of study you're talking about, and I asked this question in one of the other forums, and I basically got a word salad answer. So, this is an easy one, yes or no. Do you have hard data that this type of learning works and has better outcomes? That's a yes or no answer. And the second question is, what type of sustainable procedures are you going to be using? Are you going to be considering solar? What type of sustainable, and are you going for LEED? Are you going for LEED certification?
Yes, we are.
So those are my two questions.
Okay. Did you pick up a copy of the article that's over there on architectural design? So we're not employing radical new techniques for teaching that are associated with this design. We're already doing that. We are already trying to teach in ways that allow students to collaborate and to create and to apply their knowledge. So, as the article kind of implies, we're no longer in sort of an industrial age model where
where students are widgets and they're standing, sitting in a room at desks and we're just imprinting them with knowledge. We are in a world in which we want students to be researching, collaborating, creating, applying their knowledge. And so we need spaces that align with the way we're already teaching. So we're already teaching in the way that we're hoping the space aligns with. So what it says here, while the architecture of school is not an answer to transformation in and of itself, school design holds huge potential for both creating and supporting the daily habits of successful schools. Not only are some spaces more inspiring and healthy to occupy, but simply investing in a space provides the messaging to kids that they matter. But we are, and then it goes on to say, we know that people learn differently from one another, so why do classrooms all look the same? In a learner-driven, personalized spaces, the architecture supports collaboration among groups of students and educators, with plenty of space for inquiry and hands-on learning, such as makerspace and lots of space for students to move around and be active. These spaces will have lots of flexible seating options, so the space can be easily reconfigured for different purposes. Soft seating options for students to be comfortable as they investigate independently and learn. Movable walls so that teachers can create quiet breakout instructional areas based on needs. Creating these flexible interior environments is a giant step towards personalized learning for students. We know personalized learning works. We know that we're preparing our kids to have the skills to collaborate and to create, to solve critical problems. And we're just trying to give our teachers the space that they need for things they're already doing. Now, does sustainable make a difference, and do these designs make a difference in learning? Also in the same article, you will see sustainable benefits of sustainable learning designs. And there are studies in here in terms of cost savings, $70 per square foot, and then going on to, in a survey of hundreds of school leaders, 70% of those in green schools reported reduced student absenteeism and improved student performance. 2005 study of the cost and benefits of green schools in Washington State estimated a 15% reduction in absenteeism and a 5% increase in student test scores. It goes on to cite another study through the National Clearinghouse for Educational Facilities that students with limited classroom daylight were outperformed by those with the most natural light by 20% in math and 26% on reading tests.
And are you going to be going for solar on the school, on the new school?
Yes.
Pretty sure you have. Right. So with regard to LEED, and for those of you who don't know what LEED is, Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, is a certification structure for evaluating what is quote-unquote green, because it's described in many ways. So yes, we'll be pursuing LEED certification. We're pursuing it at least a silver level, which is the second of 4. Our goal is to exceed that, but being conservative right now. We are looking at, on the outside of the building, solar, green roofs help manage water retention on the property and reduce the, roofs give off heat, which heats up the atmosphere in the surrounding area, and green roofs limit the impact of that. We're going to look at water management solutions on site. We're looking at gray water systems where we're actually going to capture water and use it to flush toilets and things like that, so we're not drawing and paying for public utility use as much. Within the building, there are going to be components such as obviously very efficient systems, lighting, but no VOCs, so that we eliminate off-gassing of materials in the building, recycled content, locally accessible content, and the list goes on. So there will be a pretty broad array of things that we will look at. Now also, in case it's out there, some people say, well, does this cost more to do it this way? And the answer is no, it does not. It does not, and I know that because I've experienced it. We've been hired multiple times by clients to do schools. And we've introduced the concept of pursuing LEED certification, and we've arrived at constructing those schools below the budgets the clients had when they started that conversation. So I have seen that, so I can say without doubt, no, it does not cost more. Now, 10 years ago, did it cost more? Yeah, it did. But LEED and sustainable design are now the norm in the industry. So it has gotten to the point where it really isn't the premium that it used to be. It absolutely is not.
Just real quick, what percentage does the actual LEED certification actually cost?
It's nominal. There is actually a fee that we have to pay. It's a couple $1,000 for the certification itself. Some of the things we will do during construction, for example, is that contractors, when they demolish the building, will not just throw it all in a dumpster and haul it away. masonry will be ground up and reused on the site. We will sort materials for recycling and so forth. And it's been interesting. Every contractor we go through a project with, where it's the first one they've done, day one is a lot of complaints. Oh, I got to sort it out. And at the end of the job, the response has always been the same to me. That was great. I actually saved money because I got value for what I sorted out and recycled versus what I had to pay. Because you can't just dump it at the dump. You got to pay to dump it at the dump. So it does actually save money to do it that way.
And the other piece of it is that the building itself becomes a learning tool for the students. So part of our goals for our kids, learning goals for our kids, is that they're environmentally conscious and responsible and ethical in the way they think and practice, and the building provides that inspiration and knowledge. Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk about environmental issues during construction? How are you going to handle that at the high school, especially indoor air quality? And as you segment, how are the kids going to handle that? There's not enough room now.
So indoor air quality is a big component of LEED and sustainability. Not just the final outcome and that the building will have improved air quality, but during construction. So construction is dusty and it's noisy, so both acoustically in terms of that. We're going to look to isolate noise as best as possible. And in terms of the quality of managing the dust, there will be exhaust systems and parameters that will be considered. The existing mechanical systems will be isolated so that they're not both serving construction areas and active areas of the school. Those measures will be taken as well. Now that said, our goal is to mitigate those impacts during construction. We'll do a pretty good job of mitigating dust and things like that. Noise, there will be periods of noise, and we're going to do our best to manage that relative to what's happening in the school. And I will kid no one, construction is a challenge in many ways. To the students, who obviously usually don't seem to mind it as much as we fix it in our way adults do, but by the same token, the goal of a project like the high school will be planned out very carefully in advance so that teachers and students will know, next semester this is changing. We're actually going to move our class here. This is how we're going to deal with it, that kind of thing. And there will be an education process that goes along with that plan.
So will we have to put in portable classrooms to handle the classrooms that are closed while we're...
So our goal right now is no. Our goal right now is to build a new space first, so infill the courtyards. Now what that may mean is that those infills may be set up with some temporary partitions to create additional classrooms and things like that. But we believe we can do it without adding those temporary spaces, and that's our goal, because that's a cost that you don't get back. You pay for it, and then at the end of the job, you take it away, and it's kind of money that hasn't been invested in the project. So that is our goal, to do it in a way that, not the least of which that we really don't have any place to put those temporary classrooms. But to do it in a way that we don't incur that cost and then have to roll that into the project.
Thank you. A couple of questions about the high school. I'm very in favor of changes in terms of impacting the students. We've seen in the Challenge Success Survey that students are taking stress days off during each month.
One a day.
Currently, 1 month at least.
1 month, right.
1 month. And, there are certain things in here that I think can help mitigate that and create. So one of my questions is, in phase 1, is that in the high schools have to wait 3 years for some of the things like the guidance or new classrooms or the HVAC, because air in the high school is particularly hot, very cold. It's hot in winter, hot in the summer. So are any of the projects in phase 1, do they happen faster? And exactly how many classrooms were created in phase 1 and phase 2?
Okay.
It's still a little...
So Scott, I'll take a shot at it. You can correct me if need be. So the HVAC is part of the project. Some of it may be part of the ESIP, and others may be actually in the referendum, but we are going to be making changes. So if we add the air conditioning to the gym, we're going to be looking at HVAC controls so that we can hopefully solve the too hot, too cold issue at the high school. As far as
Timing on that, is it at the date that you have for
Yeah, so if the components that are in question 1 could be advanced on the same schedule as the 5-6 school. The extended schedule relates primarily to the more complicated aspects that are in question 2, the infill of courtyards and so forth. The upgrades to the mechanical system, building controls, we do have some improvements in question 1. For example, we're going to enhance the ventilation in the corridors and things like that. But the more broad upgrades to the mechanical system to the high school, in many cases will be addressed under the ESA, including building controls and mechanical equipment that will be upgraded as part of the ESA. And then in question 2, all the areas that will be renovated, primarily these areas in here that go along with the courtyard, the mechanical systems in those areas would all get upgraded with those renovations.
You asked about some other areas. So guidance we did put in. So right now, guidance it's a rabbit warren of little tiny offices, and kids have no privacy. They just sort of sit on the floor in the hallway waiting to talk to their counselor. So we did add back into the first question a renovation of the guidance area to privacy and wellness and a sense of meeting spaces for small groups of students. In this space here, we'll have 4 classrooms and a teacher collaboration room. So we're adding in a little bit of additional. Yeah,
that would be around that. The target would probably be 20 time. Yeah.
Right. So we'll be adding in classrooms here and then.
And how many classrooms are in phase 1? Like new classrooms?
There's four classrooms in this area next to the fitness.
And phase 2?
Phase 2 will be, I think there are 20, so there are
20 additional classrooms, 40 additional lab space as well, and a variety of other spaces. So a whole series of small group rooms.
I think we have 22 small group rooms and about 24 or so larger schedulable spaces in the overall design.
Just have a clarification of that. What about the basement that you talked about? Is that additional space we were thinking about the
Oh, so that's another idea we're exploring actually. So those of you familiar with the high school, you know where the Newman Gallery is in the basement. Next to that is your home for so many years here. The technology offices. So there is a question of can we move the technology folks, there how many staff there, maybe 10, and in storage, can we move that to the new Thanet building and then free up space next to the Newman Gallery in that basement that could become classroom space. So we're looking at that one option.
First, very good presentation, very clear. But this is more of a pragmatic suggestion because when you do those charts, I think the goal was to show the decline in the expense. But people don't, I mean, there are very intelligent people in town, but I think if you created, it wouldn't take a lot of work to create an algorithm where people could go to the Princeton website, put in, here's my assessed value, and it will show for the next 10 years what that amount will be. You smile.
I was smiling because I've had a board member who's been working on that.
Okay, because then you can say, for me,
right,
my administrative costs based on the increases the state allows, plus the bond, I know that exactly what it's going to cost.
Well, not exactly.
Not exactly.
That's
well, close enough.
Close enough, yes. You have to have a lot of caveats there. Interest rates may change, et cetera.
So, sorry I missed the beginning of the presentation, but I've seen other ones. I think the challenge that the town has is that it is such a monumental, large project we have, but it doesn't mean that the project doesn't exist and is needed. And so I think that's the struggle. I have kids in elementary, middle, and I can say, my son couldn't do music for weeks because the classroom is uninhabitable in seasons of the year. Similarly, kids are having windows open because it's so hot in other spaces. So, like, the HVAC has to be done. Like, we have kids that literally, he's getting sick in school because it's not actually healthy to be there. So the challenge is that that's at all of the schools and it's so monumental. So my question is just if you can share, I have big concern about this being broken into two questions because I don't understand if we don't press approve question 2, that includes the high school, what that looks like if we don't do it now. I understand we have 4 classrooms in question 1, but what is the impact? And please speak to what happens if we don't pass it, the additional work for the high school. But separately, I would like you to also speak to the introduction of a new school, because I know a lot of people are concerned, like, why can't we expand the existing schools in the land that is available instead of creating a new school that then has new operating expense? So what was that trade-off? And if you could just speak to that.
Okay, you have 3 questions in there. I'll stop before you get to 4. So one had to do with sort of HVAC across the schools. And that is in question 1. For elementary, middle school, high school, there will be we'll be addressing the HVAC and the AC and those things. Question 2 had to do with if we don't expand the high school, what is the implication?
If we don't approve it now, right?
If you don't approve it now, right? So, so we did move the courtyard infill and some of the expansion of the high school to question 2. And so let's talk honestly as a community about that. And I know there are people here who have students at the high school. So right now we're at 1,600, a little more at the high school. We're over capacity by about 200. And as a result of where we are right now, there are limitations. Dr. Carell, one of our science teachers, spoke about it at the last board meeting. There are students who can't take additional science classes. They have to. We don't offer STEM electives currently. There are lots of things that we wish we could offer that we can't. Students get shut out of some of their practical arts offerings. We just don't have the space to be able to offer. We have 2 trailers on the parking lot to create the space that we currently have. So we are over capacity. Our hallways are dark, narrow, and the space is not working well, but we're getting by. All right. The enrollment stays steady for the next 4 years based on the projections, and then starts to really shoot up in 2024, I think, and will continue to rise to about 1,800, 1,900 or something like that range. At that point, if we don't have space, now we are really hard pressed to. One, we have to increase class sizes, more than we do already. We may have to cut additional electives so that we have enough space to provide our students with the basic classes that they need to graduate, the English, the science, the math, the social studies, the world language. We may have to look at staggering a schedule for our students, so having some come in earlier and leave a little bit earlier, and some come in a little later and leave a little bit later in order to be able to have all of the students use the spaces that we currently have. Those are not great options at all, and nothing does anything to align the space with the way that our teachers want to teach and our students want to learn. Interest rates and construction costs will continue to rise over time. So all of those are implications if question 2 doesn't pass. So that's the answer to that. If it doesn't pass in November, then we take a look at that. My sense, my recommendation to the board would be we take a look at that and think through options for slight revision, and we then go back out to the public with another referendum and another ask. But we'll have to listen to what the community is telling us on that. So I'm hopeful that we get an answer that guides us. The last question you had was the 5-6 and what other options we consider and why. So let me just start with, there's the practical side of the 5-6 and then the student center drivers to the 5-6. I'm an educator. I focus most on the student center piece of it. But I'll start with the practical and stop you jump in here. When we did our analysis, when we started this process, Andrew, you were on the board back when we started with looking at our rising enrollment back in 2014, and we have done multiple enrollment studies over the course of the last 4 years. But we knew our enrollment was going up, so then we did a capacity analysis. We had the Spiegel architectural firm come in, look at every single space we had across the district and say, what are your educational uses of that space? What is the capacity of each building? And then we began to say, all right, and how could our buildings expand? So if we have to accommodate rising enrollment within our current buildings, what could we do? So we did look at, could we expand each of the elementaries somewhat? And what about JW? So the elementaries become complicated because they don't expand equally. It's not as if we can say, oh, we can easily add 4 classrooms, 5 classrooms to each elementary. Some you can add more classrooms to, some it becomes much, because of the space constraints, it's much more difficult, and that became a level of complexity. Plus it's not cheap to add space, so we were actually doing a cost analysis too. When you come to JW, trying to add space, we're looking at a school that's at 725 now, capacity 626. It's going up to 850, 900, 1,000. So we're looking at where do you provide space for 300 more students, 250 more students at that school now. There, not only would we have to take over athletic fields, there's just no space to expand for that, but even if we could, expand a little bit internally, expand externally, we would not, it's not just about the classroom space, we'd also have to expand the library or the campus core space, so we'd have another gym that we'd have to expand. So it's not just like we need classrooms for kids, we also need all the core space. The cafeteria is crowded as it is right now. Now you're going to have 250 more kids in that building. So it became almost unfeasible to be able to expand our existing facilities to meet the need, and the expense would have been considerable. So that was when we stepped and said, wow, we could create a beautiful, sustainable 5-6 building on our current site that would automatically free up space at all the elementaries without having to expand. And it would also free up space at JW without having to touch JW. And we could create this, now I'm stepping to the student center side of things, and we can create this really wonderful learning environment for 5th and 6th grade students who are at that wonderful in-between phase of their lives, where developmentally they're not quite elementary, maybe they're not quite ready for their pre-adolescent age. And so I know from my experience as an elementary principal, having 6th graders with elementary school kids, it doesn't work for a variety of reasons. They're in a different place physically, socially, emotionally, intellectually than your younger kids. And so that's why most districts decades ago went to the middle school model, the 6-8 model, and we stayed with a K-5. But at 5-6, we're not the first district to be thinking about that. Montgomery's had one for 12 years. Bridgewater has them. I think I mentioned in the past, South Brunswick had a 5-6 school years ago, and regrets to this day that they let it go. It's a place where, because kids are in the same place developmentally, intellectually, socially, it's a peaceful place. They're far removed, fewer conflicts. They're learning the same kinds of skills, so you can do a lot of cross-grade level or after-school enrichment kinds of things that bring the kids together. The teachers are all able to collaborate as well, because they're all teaching the same kinds of skills to kids, mathematically, reading and writing, social studies are on it. So you can do professional development with your entire staff that brings the school together. You can move forward faster as a professional body than in a K through 5 or K through 6, where there are very different levels in terms of the skills that teachers may be teaching. They're very different skills. So We also thought, wow, this is wonderful because now we create this 5-6 school. We don't have to worry about redistricting. One of the problems with expanding our elementaries was if I can expand a little bit at JP, for example, but I can't expand as much at CP, then when I look at demographic studies, JP is actually not scheduled to go up that much. Those numbers remain flat. But CP, that's where a lot of the growth may be. So now what do? Now I have to start busing kids out of their neighborhood, as more than we're doing already, to go to JP or some other school. It became very complicated that way. Plus, with a 5-6 school, now I have an opportunity for every kid in the district to come to this really special place where the 5th graders get the benefit of some of those 6th grade or middle school opportunities to explore electives that they might not have at the elementary school. And yet the 6th graders also get the sort of extended nurturance of an elementary school. So it's this nurturing, caring, but independently exciting environment for do all those things. Yes. So so that's where the 5th and 6th grade idea really came, and all kids get to experience that. Every kid in the district is going to come through there and develop a connection with each other, and then move on to JW. So there was a lot of thinking that went into what are all the options, what can we do practically, logistically, financially, and then what's the right thing for our kids.
So you're handling the operation for the new school out of the existing budget?
Yes, and that is going to be, that'll be a challenge for us because we're looking at 1.5 in staff potentially. It could be less than that. We're going to have to roll things in. We're not going to get 600 kids right away. And then we have the 170,000 or something. So yeah, so we're looking at 1.6, 1.7 million dollars, and so we will have to start now creating a reserve fund for 2020, which means that we're going to have to be even more cost conscious than we are, and say that this year we said no to new staff. We're trying to find food breakage and other needs. Breakage meaning if I have teachers at the higher end of the salary who retire, I can replace them with teachers who started at a lower level, and use the breakage to try and fund some additional positions as the enrollment continues to rise. And I'm hoping that the state is actually taking a look at funding, particularly for schools that have charter schools and rising enrollment. And that's not an easy set of constraints in which we operate, because right now the 2% that we can raise the tax levy is about $1.5 million. The tax levy is at 76 million, so with the 2% of that, we got 1.5 million. The recent expansion of the charter school of 76 students, I take 1.2 million of our operating budget and I give it to the charter school for those 76 students. So that's 1.5 million is what we're allowed to increase the operating budget by for the nearly 4,000 students we have in this district. I know that the charter school and I would link arms and walk to see Governor Murphy to talk about, please continue. He's made changes already. Like we got an increase of $475,000 in state aid this year. They are looking at how can they start funding the charter schools better, because the charter school is, they're also relatively flat funded and they're looking for more. I think that is something that would absolutely unite us. I would love to be working closely with a charter school, and I think one of the issues that we're really facing in this community is that the funding formula doesn't work. Yes,
First, I've been able to now attend a few of these sessions and see.
You could probably do it if you want.
I just wanted to compliment you on your passion and express my gratitude to you and Scott and the board for all the work that's gone into putting together what I think are really well thought through and compelling plans. So I get to say mine.
You're positive, okay.
So two questions that, one related to the numbers, which I think I'm understanding, but want to make sure, and the second one
and goes to, I think, this bigger topic of affordability. And so the first question is, if I understand Scott correctly, the $129,600,000 whatever thousand is the maximum gross cost if we were to approve everything. If I actually has the maximum gross cost, but we get state aid.
Correct.
And so my first question is what the assumption is for state aid and whether that's baked into your projections. And then the second question is, I haven't heard much talk about whether there's an opportunity to fundraise. And I would just note that the facility that we're in right now benefited, which is a publicly supported facility, benefited from something like $8 million of gifts, which dramatically brought the overall cost down and made it more affordable. And these are two different institutions. I'm just wondering if any thought has been given to that, because we have some very wealthy institutions, we have some very wealthy individuals, and I think a lot of them, I would hope they would be inclined to support public education in this town.
Thank you. So with regard to state grants, I don't want to speak to that. It is baked into the...
Yeah, so the state support comes in the form of debt service. It's not a grant. So it doesn't offset these dollars directly. In other words, they don't write us a check. What they do is they pay a portion of principal and interest over the life of the bond. That's where that is reflected. So the impact figures you see without the state contribution would be higher. Okay. So it doesn't impact these dollars, it impacts these dollars.
Is that subject to appropriation each year, or is that guaranteed at the beginning of the issuance of the bonds?
So I would love to give a yes/no answer to that, but I can't. Okay. Yes, it is subject to the appropriation process. There have been years where the state has underfunded debt service. But my understanding, and this is me taking what the financial people have told me, is that they have never done that over a long period of time. So if it gets underfunded for a year or two, it gets made up. And so the net amount is funded over time, is my understanding. So our projects that are pending with the Department of Education will receive an approval. That approval will have a percentage of debt service aid that will be designated in writing to the district. And that is part of the approval process that we're in right now.
And is that presented as part of the prospectus for the issuance of the bonds that the state has made this commitment?
Yes.
Second question was about fundraising. So the board has developed an ad hoc committee with the goal of looking at getting contributions both to our operating budget, which is critical for us, and as well as to the project itself. So we have been engaged actually for the past year and a half in reaching out to institutions and asking them to support, particularly those institutions that send students to our schools, and asking them to support the operating budget. And we're still engaged in conversations regarding individual support for the referendum and particular projects associated with that. And we are also, we are to be working with Community Area Foundation on specific projects as well, and we're looking at talking to individuals, as you indicated.
Is there any assumption in these numbers?
No.
So that would, if successful, that would reduce the cost?
Correct. Did you want to say something?
Maybe, because they might.
Introduce yourself after we had board members introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Daphne, and I'm one of the board members, and I'm chair of our board's ad hoc committee on alternative revenues. And so I think it was last year we started going to the nonprofits in town that either contribute or have not traditionally contributed in the past, and we said we're going to be doing a referendum, and the board won't go ahead with it until we, unturn every stone, and so that's what we did. So the first entity we spoke with was the Princeton Theological Seminary, which has made voluntary payments to the school district for many years, and they, even though they're giving us money and they're having their own financial issues, They agreed to increase their payment to the district by 25%. That goes to our operating budget, and that will begin the 18-19 school year. And they also committed to a further increase should their population rise. Separately, we went to the Institute for Advanced Study, which sends children to our district, and they agreed to pay. Again, we spoke to them about our concerns about for the taxpayers, and they agreed to give us $100,000 a year to our operating budget over the next 5 years. And then we've gone to other institutions that may or may not send children to the school, and so while we may not have always been successful, we have really gone around with a cup asking for money. And while it's not, a significant amount when you consider the tax levy, the board has really tried to minimize the impact wherever we can. Now, going back to your question, Brian, about projects, we're in discussions, and so it really depends on the grantor and how they want to handle it, but there might be a donation to a project that is not, let's say, included in the first question, and if the second question doesn't pass, it still might occur. We don't know. So that's just what I wanted to add, which might lead to more classrooms for the high school.
Who has not had a chance to speak yet?
This gentleman on this.
Hi, very nice presentation, thank you very much, it's very helpful. I'm still a little confused about this chart, actually, because my understanding of what you've been saying is that currently the operating budget has about $5 million allocated towards debt service now, is that correct?
But actually not. Yeah. Yes, it's
Within the total budget right now.
And so is that when you have this chart reverse itself, is that assuming that $5 million then is basically given back to the
debt is paid off?
It's paid off.
Right.
And then you would reduce the school tax rate to give that money back? That's what I'm not understanding, is the impact of that, because this implies that after 3 years, right, we're actually, we're getting a tax reduction, is that correct?
So,
that's what, I'm sorry, I'm confused.
Yes, it is. It is. But, and this is assuming that we're also taking on the $129 million, or this is $82.5 million debt.
Yeah.
So you have the $5 million that we're currently paying, and then there's an additional debt service that overlays the top of that. That is the number that's the additional tax impact is what you're seeing in the first 3 years. And the $5 million comes off. The other is still there, but you're paying less for it than you were paying for the previous $80 million of.
And then out of that, so you're after 3 years, you're no longer paying the $5 million on the current debt service.
Correct.
So that money gets, where does that money go? That it goes towards paying the new bond, right? Which is less than the $5 million. That's what
Yes, right. So you have yes, it is.
Okay.
So and the other thing that may be important to say is that we've got a blended bonding. So we have some of the referendum would be 20-year bond, and some will be 30-year. Right? So some of the new school is likely to be a 30-year investment. But if we're talking about some of the other purchases within or projects, they may be on a 20 years schedule. So they're showing it over 30 years because it's just easier for them to do it that way, our financial advisors. But yes, you're seeing a decrease in your current tax level after year 4.
Right. And then that's, again, to clarify, this does not take into account the increase in operating costs at all.
It does not. No, we talked about that before. It does not. However, that increase is going to be we have a 2% cap, which on the tax levy, which we are able to go over for occasionally the state gives us a waiver to go over if we have increased enrollment or if our healthcare costs go above a certain level.
Yes, Crystal Knapp. First of all, do you have a breakdown of the impact of the proposed referendum in terms of pennies per 100 of assessed property value each year? I think that is really like the best way, I don't, so,
This is for 100,000 of assessed.
I mean pennies per 100, so not mixing the old with the new, just the new, like if question 1 passes, it will be, the first year, 10 cents per 100 of assessed property value for debt service. Second year will be 15 cents, broken out that way. That's traditionally the way I've seen it.
So we don't have it by cents, but we did it for 100,000 versus per, you're asking for 100 or 1,000, I don't recall. But,
The traditional way people break it out is pennies per 100 of assessed property value when they talk about tax increases.
So I don't have that number, but you can do the math based on the 3164 is for 100,000.
The other question, but I think it would be helpful, and you might, people might stop questioning you on this issue if you break it out that way, so they can look at their actual tax, at their assessment and multiply it. But second of all, you talk about the 2% cap. We have a new governor. Has he indicated that that cap is here to stay? Because, for example, it's already been lifted for police and fire in arbitration. So, I don't know what the talk is at the state level, or if districts have any information on that or not. I think the governor wrote an editorial slamming NJ.com for saying the 2% cap was a success. So, but I don't know. I'd just be curious.
Crystal, do you know something that I don't know about the 2% cap? I would love to. Yeah. I'd love to have that, because I do think the governor is trying to be sensitive to the funding in school districts and the complexities that districts like ours have with rising enrollment and a 2% move on how much we can raise the tax levy. Yes.
I mean, you know this better than anybody. The governor can't do that unilaterally, right? It would take the legislature to do that. Sorry, I'm Maria Spall. I live in town. And of course you know that. But I'm just saying that for the benefit of everybody who doesn't know that. And I can't imagine. Can you? I mean, the 2% cap is so politically popular, and they have such a hard time raising taxes this year.
But it's already been changed for arbitration.
Right, and I think that, you and I could talk privately about our conjecture about why that is. I think that was probably in political favor, but the 2% cap is different than that. That constitutes a very small portion of some municipalities' budgets. The 2% cap overall has been so politically popular across the board, bipartisan, and especially in this tax climate, I can't. You and I are both just speculating, right? But I can't imagine that the legislature and the governor would lift the 2% cap meaningfully. That just seems so wildly unlikely.
So I just want to, it might be, since it's conjecture, but I just want to put it out first. It's 11. Yeah. We can keep going as long as it's possible. We have some.
Okay, this gentleman in the back has been having his hand raised for a while. We'll take that question and then we can try and wrap up. But I'm happy to stay and answer. And Scott will be through as well to answer any questions.
So my name is Henry Singh. I've done a fair portion of my career was as a systems integrator working for the government. I'm an independent contractor, but the government is my customer. And in that role, I was the chief architect on a multi-billion-dollar program. We had a very clear delineation between requirements and design. The government owned the requirements, and as a contractor, we could not influence that. That was up to them, and then we would provide the design and work together and map requirements to design so that we could have a test plan. I'm talking IT, but analogously here, what I'm asking is requirements analysis of what does the community need, what do the schools need. It's very different than the design of the buildings to meet those needs. When I saw the chart earlier and it said fencing, at the risk of getting a lot of fencing families angry with me, each word on that page doesn't carry the same weight for me. My neighbor earlier was talking about HVAC, very important topic, serves the whole community, students, faculty, administrators, so on. Fencing serves fairly narrow. So if I was doing any kind of requirements analysis, I've been looking at all of the things I'd like to have on my list.
Yes.
Who benefits from them? Yes. And what those items cost, to the extent that the costs are severable.
So let me
and I'd be able to draw a cut line somewhere. And I might say, you know what, we'd love to renovate the fencing room or the fitness room, but it doesn't make the cut line And that requirements list would be separate from, say, an architect's set of designs.
Correct.
So was that done?
Yes, yes. So I'm glad you brought that up, because when we talk about process, which is one of the goals for this meeting, we began with a comprehensive needs analysis where we said, what are all the things that we possibly could benefit from having, and the needs of our students and our teachers and our coaches. We put that all out, and we ended up then doing a priority 1, priority 2, priority 3. What you're looking at here is sort of down to priority 1 item. So we started at probably close to 180 million and began to cut back to where we are now. So something like fencing, it's on the list as a need along with wrestling, because we don't have space for the students. They're performing at a really high level, winning lots of awards. They're practicing in our cafeteria at the high school after school. That's what they're practicing. And of course, that cafeteria then gets used for other club meetings after school, and so you have a sport with epes that's trying to practice in that space. Or it gets canceled because the cafeteria needs to get used for something else.
I did use it just as an example.
But I'm saying music, but it's a helpful one because there's a careful thought, discussion back and forth that goes into every single item that's on there. The public sees the board meetings. They see people asking questions and the board receives information. What they don't see are hours and hours and hours of committee meetings where the people who are sitting here, they're in facility and finance, and they are asking every question that you're asking, we've been hit with. And we go through and try and defend, like, what is in the best interest of our kids? What do we really need to have in there? And so I appreciate the way you're trying to discern the priorities, what's needed and what's a want. And that's exactly the process that the board has gone through to come up with the projects that you see listed here.
Okay.
So I thank everyone for being here this morning and for staying so focused on this process that has such an impact on our students and our community. This is one of multiple forums that we will be having as we move ahead. Once again, the election date is now November 6th. And I look forward to seeing many of these same faces at future board meetings and information sessions. So, thank you.